Good morning, everybody. Welcome to High Ash Farm and some of Norfolk's claylands. Half of High Ash Farm consists of sands and gravels, and the other half a complete mixture of heavy boulder clays, which at this time of the year, after dry weather, the clay shrinks quite considerably and forms, well, basically the field I'm kneeling on is called Dirty Close, which gives you an idea how the horses used to come back to the farmyard after ploughing this field, covered in clay around their hooves. And the clay shrinks considerably and it just looks like crazy paving. I'll just holding a little camera at the moment, and I'll just give you an idea of what it looks like. I'll hold the camera quite close to the ground here, and you can see it's just fissured. This is my school ruler that I had at school. Never knew what it was for, apart from whacking your friend in the next seat to you. But just look at this. This is a foot ruler, and I have to actually hold on to it because it will disappear down into the ground. The cracks here, some of them I've managed to get a cane in a good 3 feet, and so the cracks are well down, and that's why it's a difficult time of the year for some of our birds here, because the worms which they feast on have got out of this bone dry fissured soil and gone deep down, 5, 6, 7 feet down into the ground, so they're inaccessible. But the interesting thing about the claylands in southern Norfolk particularly, where most of the clay is, there are odd patches further up in North Norfolk, but most of it lies in a line south of the city of Norwich. And if I just walk over here a little bit, we'll go and see one of the features which are quite common across the Norfolk countryside, or at least as not as common as they used to be. And these are the little ponds and pits which, particularly in the 1950s and 60s, dotted the Norfolk countryside. And here it is. It's on clay, and it's a little pond, and it is quite ancient, and you can tell the old ponds because when you look round them like this, the ground is completely level. There's no big mounds around this pond, which tells us that the soil, the clay that was here, has been moved away, and it had several uses out in the Norfolk countryside particularly. One was to build clay block barns, and the other is either to water livestock or to use as marl, because the clay here is absolutely full of chalk. And if I get the camera down, I'm just sitting on the edge of the little pond here, you can see in the bottom, I'm just going to get hold of a little handful there it is, chalk that you could write on a blackboard with. The clay is full of that, and this is the water level here in front. Just on the other side of the pond is a moorhen's nest in the vegetation. There's quite a nice little hedge around about half the pond, so some of the water is shaded and some's in full sunlight. And it's an incredible little habitat, absolutely incredible. So lots of vegetation, sort of things that like having their feet in water. There's 4 or 5 ponds left on High Ash Farm. Many of them were filled in with a government grant in the 1960s and 70s and early 80s, and some still remain here, and each little pond on High Ash is completely different to the others. There's one behind me on the other side of this field, Dirty Close, in the clay again, and it's absolutely full of reed mace or bulrushes. Another one further down in the valley, also on clay, is full of reeds and rushes of all different sorts, and soft rush in particular, just loving the water habitat. This one has got a really lovely muddy bottom, and out in the middle here, and it's about 150 square yards to give you an idea of what we're looking at. I'm just going to scan around with a little camera to give you an idea, and I'm going to pop down like this so we can get a better view of it across the surface of the water. There are dragonflies out there just hawking above the water, and lots of different habitats, because it's easy just to walk past a pond and think, oh, just water in a hole, and it's not like that at all, because this is the home of hundreds and hundreds of different species. So when you look at a pond, you see the water surface, and living on that are a whole host of different animals and insects and invertebrates. Some of the duckweed as well grows on the top. We've got small lilies growing out there in the middle. Whirligig beetles, I can see some of those shooting round on the top of the water. And some pond skaters as well. They're on that surface film, which is almost like a layer of elastic over the top of the water. Then we come to the vegetation zone. And if I point the camera down, you can actually see some plants growing low down in the water. And that's the habitat of things like great diving beetles and water boatmen. And they're coming up all around me. Every few moments, some pop up to the top and they recharge their air sac underneath their bodies. So they live quite low down in the water in the deeper levels, but they're using the oxygen so they don't have to come up too often. And they get this little silver bubble underneath them and then descend down. The great diving beetle's quite carnivorous. It will eat all sorts of different invertebrates in the pond, things like Daphnia and Cyclops. It'll eat those. It'll also eat small fish, and occasionally they'll even attack larger fish. They're quite a large green beetle, iridescent green, very, very beautiful. And then out in the middle here, if I put the camera up a little bit further away from me, about 10-15 metres away, we've got the open water zone, and that's important as well. So that's where some of the birds will come and swim, things like mallard. Well, two dragonflies just flying over the top there, mating as they're flying, joined together. Really nice. And then, of course, the layer that you will not really see, although the water's a little bit muddy, because I think some otters came in here last night. There's stickleback still in here. It's not dried up at all. And then in the bottom mud layer, you've got things like bloodworms, those bright red worms you sometimes see swimming around in the water. Frogs will use that mud layer to hibernate in. And that blood red, by the way, that's hemoglobin, exactly the same sort of compound as in human blood as well. So, right, all sorts of different habitats. Some birds will come as well to drink round the edges. I'm going to leave a camera here overnight, so I'm actually going to leave you here exactly where I'm sitting and see what comes overnight and tomorrow morning, and then we'll have a look and a listen on Sunday morning when I'm next on the radio. So, lots of things to watch out for. So grass snakes, I've seen those here regularly this time of the year. They'll come in and search for frogs and other invertebrates as well. Anything to eat, and that's nice and easy. Water shrews, there's 2 or 3 around the edge of the pond here. They're hunting for insects. What else have we got? Oh, water voles. And they're going to be feeding on some of the plants around the margin. If I turn the camera around, you'll see there's a nice green vegetative area all around the edge of the pond. And then, of course, swallows will come skim over the top. Although this is a small pond, they'll come and top up with water. And because we've got a mud edge, which I'm almost sitting in, yep, I've got a wet bottom. Just for radio, Norfolk this is. Oh dear. And so swallows will come and drink, and house martins as well will come and get some of the mud, and they're nesting in some cottages just on the other side of the field under the eaves. Vastly declining species, and they get the little clay pellets, take them back, mix them with saliva, and then they make those wonderful flask-shaped nests as well. So you can see that little ponds like this, it's easy to walk past and not think much is happening, but it's a vital and really important part of the variety that you can see out in the Norfolk countryside, and hugely important. I am so glad that some of these ponds were left and I didn't have them bulldozed in, and I'm sure that moorhen that's nesting on the other side of the pond, its nest is about 18 inches up in the undergrowth on the side of the pond, because the water level has dropped. Fortunately, there's good metre of water left out in the middle, just a nice depth to support all the different creatures that live in and around this pond. Right, I'm going to pop the camera on the ground and walk away, and I'll come back at the same time tomorrow, see what we've got, see who's been having a bath, see who has been having a